for everyone, or T for teens.
The story of the PlayStation 2 starts shortly after the launch of the original PlayStation in 1994. Ken Kutungari, the father of the PlayStation, already saw the need to start developing the next generation of system to stay ahead of the competition. Sony wanted to develop a new system that would not only play the new generation of games, but also be fully backward compatible to the original PlayStation. The only system that had accomplished that up until this point was the Atari 7800, being fully backward compatible to the 2600. Also, development of the graphics rendering chip would be designed in-house. However, Sony wanted to see their options in case their chip didn't work out. They worked with a few different companies to design a new graphics rendering chip. The most popular of these companies was Argonaut Games, which had been working with Nintendo since the NES days, and had created the Super FX chip for use in the SNES system. After several designs were submitted, Sony decided to go with their own in-house design, which became the graphics synthesizer chip. With help of Toshiba, Sony also designed the CPU for the system called the Emotion Engine. Work continued on the development through the mid-90s. Sony ultimately decided to put a new technology into the system, the newly designed DVD-ROM drive. This would not only allow the user to view DVDs, but also have games on DVD format, which would increase the amount of space for games on the disc by tenfold, making better quality games with amazing graphic capabilities. To top it off, Sony also decided to make the system able to connect to the internet via a 56K modem or high-speed broadband, and to have a hard drive for games that would support it. This would be accomplished with an add-on accessory that mounted on the back of the PS2 via the expansion slot called the PS2 Network Adapter. The design of the PS2 case was inspired by Atari. Ken Kutungari was a fan of Atari and wanted something in the design that would bring back the nostalgic feeling from the old-school Atari systems. He wanted to design a system with fins like the original 2600, but it seems Sony took it a step further. Towards the end of the Atari's computer life cycle, they were going to release a new ST computer named the Falcon Microbox. However, this was canceled as the company went into bankruptcy and never saw the light of day. The case design, however, looked eerily similar to the case that was designed for the PS2. The two systems look almost identical besides their color. By mid-1997, info was leaked to the press about the new system, and its features such as having a DVD-ROM drive and being backwards compatible to the PS1. However, Sony denied that they were working on a new system at all. It was almost a full 2 years after this, in March of 1999, that Sony officially announced that they were making a new PlayStation and told the world about its features. In September of 1999, Sega released the Dreamcast. It had a successful launch, selling more than 500,000 units in the first 2 weeks. Sony unveiled a new PS2 at the Tokyo Game Show on September 20th. 2 games were shown, the new Gran Turismo and Tekken Tag Tournament, to the amazement of the crowd. Once info about the new PlayStation came out, gamers were hesitant to buy the Dreamcast because the PS2 would have a DVD-ROM drive, which at the time was a huge selling point. The PS2 launched in March of 2000 in Japan, October in North America, and November in Europe. The launch was wildly successful. Sony sold more than 1.4 million units by the end of March in Japan, selling out of its entire inventory. More units were made for the North American and European launch, but they too were soon sold out. This led to the first time a video game system was being sold on eBay for several times the amount of the actual MSRP. Production of the system ramped up, and eventually there were ample supplies of the PS2. Also, Sony made better dev systems for third-party developers, making it easier for them to program games for the system. This, coupled with the fact that the entire PS2 system was selling for equal or less than a standalone DVD player, this was a game changer at the time. Sales of the system soared. By the end of 2000, Sony had created such a financial nightmare for Sega, they decided to pull the plug on the Dreamcast and console production altogether by March of 2001. Although Sega was no longer a competitor, 2 new video game systems were released in 2001. the Nintendo GameCube, and Microsoft's Xbox, both of which were more powerful than the PS2, but the GameCube lacked DVD playback and the Xbox needed an add-on remote control sensor to make DVD playback possible. This made the PS2 the go-to system if you wanted the ability to play DVDs as well as games. Also, with its ability to play PS1 games, made it the most popular system of the generation. They also secured exclusive licenses for games such as Grand Theft Auto and Metal Gear, making the system even more sought after. The PS2 really didn't get into online gaming until the launch of Microsoft's Xbox Live. Sony knew they had to get into the online realm to stay competitive. Unlike Microsoft that controlled the servers that the games were hosted on, Sony made the developer of the game run the servers for their games on the PS2. This kept playing online free to the player, unlike Xbox Live, which was a paid service. This made the PS2 more tempting to people who wanted to play online and on the cheap. During the PS2 production, Sony released another unique PS2 system called the PSX in Japan in 2003. It was a PS2 with a built-in DVR. It had up to a 250 gigabyte hard drive installed to record TV from either VHF or a cable tuner. It was also the first PlayStation to use Sony's XMB or cross-media bar graphics user interface that the PSP and the PS3 eventually had. By the end of 2003, the PS2 was a hit, already selling millions of units over what the competition was selling. They wanted to make more profits, so they followed what Atari had done years before and started the design of a cost-reduced version of the PS2. In September of 2004, Sony released the PS2 Slim, a much smaller PS2 that included a top-loading drive, no hard drive support, and had a built-in modem. Also by this time, hacking the system was becoming popular with mod chips, and the new Slim version implemented protections against known mod chips at the time. The PS2 continued to be produced until 2013, when it was finally discontinued worldwide. The last game, Pro Evolution Soccer 2014, being released on November 8, 2013 in the UK. The PS2 launched in 2000 and was discontinued in 2013, giving the system a 13-year lifespan and selling over 155 million units, making it the best-selling video game console ever produced to this day, and bringing the DVD format to homes worldwide.
Game over, man. It's game over.